Howdy, folks. It's season 1, episode 8, midday show. Scrolling with Charlie, and look who we got. We've got Carole Rothman. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
It's so great to have you on. For those that don't know, she has 2 books out, but I cannot find the original one. She'll hold it up.
I'll show you the other one if you want.
All right, go for it. A little higher, but actually you have to be right beside your face or covering your face. Not that anything's wrong with your face. Okay, folks, that's her first book, and this is her second book. And I'm tickled to death to have her on because I've been a long-time admirer. And I'm almost speechless because the things she has learned to do is just amazing to me. And she's taught herself, I'm pretty sure. But to verify that, I'm going to go over and ask her now some questions. First of all, she goes by Scroller Girl on YouTube, unless that's changed.
Yeah, that's the same.
Okay, good deal. She also does, I want to say baking versus cooking, because I'll let you answer that. What else do you have on your channel?
Well, actually, it's pretty well split between baking videos, including my son's wedding cake, and scrolling hints as I come across things that people should see or that'll help them out. Because a lot happens once you publish a book, you move on from there, and you need a way to get that stuff out.
Yeah.
So when we think about that, we just take out a little flip camera and we shoot a video and we get it up. I got 48 videos up there now.
Awesome.
And feedback's been good. People will either ask me for scrolling advice, where to buy wood, or the recipe for my raisin cookies, and you never know what's going to come in.
Well, maybe we'll get some people on here that have a spouse that's watching with them, and maybe they'll want to know a recipe. I'd like to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw in the current issue of the Scroll Store magazine, I have a cake in there that's decorated using cake decorating techniques.
Yes, yeah, I noticed that. It was I don't have the magazine with me. It looks like a wedding cake almost. It's like 3 tiers. Okay, yeah, that was you, of course. I'm just amazed. Oh, I guess I should introduce my co-host. I'm sorry, Russ. Russ, tell everybody. Well, y'all know Russ because y'all watched the show before. This is Russ with Simply Wooden Creations. Or Russ, if you want to say anything, go for it. If you want to ask Carole anything, go for it.
Hi, Carole.
Hi, Russ. How are you?
Hi, Carole.
Nice to see you.
I'm doing good. Nice to see you, and I'm really, like Charles said, I'm really glad you were able to join us today, and hopefully we can get some get information for our viewers.
Absolutely.
Okay. Want to know anything? Just ask away.
I think we're both kind of starstruck. I know I am, and people may laugh at that.
I got a question. I got a question right off the bat.
I'm sorry?
I said I got a question right off the bat.
Okay.
What made you, what came about, how did you do it, or what made you decide to write a book? The first one in particular.
About the book?
Yeah,
well,
the book. What made you decide to do it?
Well, I was drawn to it. I came across some plans for making bowls on the scroll saws. Actually, it's a technique that's been around for a long time. The wood turners used to use it. I found a book that was written in the 70s by Dale Nish, and they used the bandsaw to cut the rings, and we glue it up, and then we'd finish it up on the lathe. And then I came across a Mechanics Illustrated, of all places, book with a really ugly bowl in it, but the concept really interested me, and I'd always thought collapsible baskets were neat, and this sort of took it to the next level. But there was nothing out there that explained how you did it, how you figured out the angle, just what was going on. There was one book that was written by Roland Spielman in the 90s. He did gorgeous books. It's called Making Bowls with a Scroll Saw and a Router. But it was very high-end, and it was almost impossible to understand. So I got out a ruler and graph paper and tried to figure out how you figure out the angles. And I figured out that it was actually a trigonometric function. I said a triangle. Of course, it's been a long time since I took trigonometry, so I hit the web. And I figured out just how you could compute it, and I was starting to make sense out of it. About that time, I had my first publication in the Scroll Sword Woodworking from the 2007 design contest. I had submitted a box that I made with loops on it that were made like I used to make them when I did cake decorating. And when you bring in something that people don't know, it tends to blow them away. And Shannon Flowers, who was the editor then, liked it. And I sent her an article, and since I've done some writing, got some published work in caregiving, so I know how to write. So she liked the project, she liked my writing. She said, "What else do you have?" And at that point, I had a bunch of bowls that I was playing with, more than an article. So here I am. I've been scrolling maybe 2 years. I was really very wet behind the ears, but I said, "Would you be interested in a book?" I mean, I could hardly believe that I had the guts to propose it. And to my surprise, they said yes, because no one had done it. And I figured it was out there waiting for someone to do it. And I figured it was only a matter of time before somebody, you know, with good technical stuff, somebody would say like Gary McKay, who's good at figuring things out and had done some reading work, but simple stuff, jumped on it. And I said, no, let me get my foot in the door. And I worked my tail off. And I ended up, before I sent the bowls in, I refinished about a half a dozen of them because I was sure they'd look at it and would say, no, these aren't good enough to publish. But it turned out that they really liked it. And because it was new and it was different, and I've always had a pretty good design and color sense. You know, it worked out.
I was gonna say it definitely shows your color sense, your ideas is. I can't even fathom. I mean, you say that that it's been around for a long time, but I had never heard of the concept. I believe Steve Good did one little, what he called concentric circle vase, and then I saw the stuff you were coming out with, and my jaw just hit the floor. I said, and then to this day they still advertise your books because they're doing so well, and it's just. I mean, I would love it if you just kept coming out with books. I mean, I know there's so many ideas you can come up with, but it sounds like you're reaching all the plateaus.
But I'm trying to use the magazines to get the new stuff out, and to get people to go out of their comfort zones and get out of the plain straight-sided bowls, all cut at the same angle, and start playing. And we'll see what happens. But I fully expect that people take it and run with it and do something really interesting. I'd like to be known as the originator, and I'm sure that eventually there'll be people who are technically better than I. I have average skills, they're decent skills, but you would laugh, Charlie, if you saw what I did with a spiral blade. I mean, I can't control that thing worth a damn.
I can't control the straight blade, but I would like to see, if you ever had a blooper reel, I would love to see that, because I've always seen you being all prim and proper on your videos explaining things, and here I stutter over my tongue half the time. But and you talked about different angles. All I've ever tried is this and then this, in different sizes, and then a mouth. But I am scared of trying different things. I wrote to you a long time ago, and folks, she's easily accessible. I never gave you a chance, Carole, to say where you're living if you so choose, as well as where people can find you on social media and or YouTube.
Okay, let's see. I live in Pauling, New York, which is about, I guess must be about 90 miles north of New York City. And most of my conversations with people, for people who find my address, it's scrollsawbowls@yahoo.com. It's the email address that I use when people have questions and stuff like that, and that's posted on my blog, which is scrollsawbowls.blogspot.com. And people, when they get hung up on something or want to show me something or have a problem or question, they get in touch with me there. My Scroller Girl channel on YouTube has all of the videos that I've done, and people find them helpful and sometimes use that to find me and then write to me. Anything from where can I get veneer to, what should I do if I don't have the thickness of wood that you want. And I enjoy it, because if I'm going to put something out there, I better be prepared to stand behind it. I'm not going to leave people stranded.
Yeah, that's all I always admired about you. And Russ, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. But one thing I've always admired about you, I mean, some authors will, there's very few, but some authors will put their stuff out there and they just don't have time for the little guy. But every time I've ever written, you've responded. I don't always comprehend what you say because I have I have two brain cells and they collide. But uh, you told me about, because I would ask, okay, you're in your first book, and you might be able to reference this. You have a little chart that says if you want to make the rings a certain width and it has a certain thickness of wood, then you have to cut it at this angle.
Mhm.
And I think, well, me using spiral blades, I think it changes it slightly, and I've found that out the hard way a few times. But that's not on you because most people are smart and use a flat blade for something like that. But, you referred me to some kind of formula and it had a name. Do you recall what that name was? Uh, that or you said some guy told you. I don't remember. I know I'm not helping any asking you a question and then leaving us all hanging and not knowing that. Uh, I'd have to go through my Facebook and stuff and look. But she's also on Facebook, by the way, folks, under her name, Carole Rothman. So I'll just forget I ever said that. uh, how long did it take you before you grasped the concept and realized all the different things you could do with it? Because I still have trouble to this day because of using spirals, figuring out how I want to do things. I've seen you do all the crisscross and the I forget what they're called now that I have to remember.
What, swags?
Yeah, flags. Yeah. I mean, how long did it take you to come up with these ideas and perfect them? Because I know you talked about lining them up.
Well, it didn't take that long. I used that book that I mentioned before, the Spielman and Rule book, as a model for what could be done, and I figured out how you could do it more easily. I mean, his book, he'd been making bowls for 10 years, and it showed it. I wanted to make it so that it was foolproof, so that if you followed this, anyone with reasonable skills could do it. So I used, I'll borrow from anyone and then make their ideas my own and find ways to do it in an easier way. So I don't compute angles when I'm doing some of my glue-ups. I cut a piece in half, then I'll cut it in half again, then I'll cut it in half again. And I keep it real simple because it doesn't have to be complicated to get something that looks pretty. And the rules are pretty straightforward. If a piece of wood, if say you're gluing in a strip of wood, if you do it so it runs through the middle of the bowl, it's going to come out and make a straight line when you make your bowl. If you do it so that the rings will touch it, not through the middle, but on the rings, it will curve. It's like magic. I always have a stack of unglued rings like that, which I'll stack on a demo. I'll be doing that when I do my demo at the Fox Chapel Open House in 2 weeks. And people can't believe it. Like, where does it come from? It's almost like magic. But it's a fixed relationship. It works every time. And then you got to figure out how to glue it up so they don't get all sort of jaggy. So there's skill involved in making it look really good, but the basic principles are the same. It's like, as I said, trigonometry, dealing with things that just are. And if you respect them, it'll work out that way.
Yeah, usually it takes me a good 3 or 4 tries on something before I can perfect it. And I'll admit I've done the chicken route. I've only chosen like natural stuff, and maybe I'll throw a different breed of wood ring in the middle. I fear change, I guess. Do you ever find yourself when you come up with a certain look? Do you actually openly, even by yourself, get excited like, "Holy crap, that looks cool"?
Yeah, actually, the bowl was, I think, in the spring issue of the Woodworking magazine that looked like a petal that went in and then opened out. I've been wanting to make that for a long time. But when you glue it up, it doesn't look anything like what the finished thing is because you got to take off a lot of wood. And you sort of watch it emerge as you're sitting there, and it's like, damn, this is pretty. And it worked. I mean, that's, I've had things that don't work out so well. We call that designer firewood, as you know.
Yeah.
It happens to all of us. So when I do my experiments, I use a piece of wood that's nice enough so if it works, it'll look good. But if it doesn't work out, then I haven't blown the farm on an expensive piece of wood.
All right.
A piece of ebony I've been keeping going for about 4 years. I just take off like a 1/4 inch of it at a time.
Absolutely. And I'll get to this in just a sec. I'm going to get to Russ. Go ahead.
What would you say is the hardest project or hardest bowl that you have done out of all the ones you have done so far?
It's a good question.
I mean, there's got to be one that when you were doing it, it was like, wow, this is a lot tougher than the rest of them.
Well, yeah, there was one that had very long, narrow swags in it. The gluing up of it so that everything worked out was a challenge because it's hard to explain, but when you're gluing up something like that, you have to figure where it's going to all meet up once it's sanded. You have to anticipate it, and you have to sort of train your eye and look on the inside and outside. When you're doing it for a whole bunch at once, it is really tough. And that came out, I just nailed it. And then I used, I think it was water locks on it, which is a finish that I will never ever use again because it was work. I don't like my finishes to be work. But I stuck with it and came out with something I never did again. I said, this is just too much of a hassle. But I sort of copied it. I looked to the turners because those are the ones that do the pretty bowls. And I say, what can I make here that's accessible for the scroll saw? The other thing that are tough.
I've had a lot of.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've heard a lot about people saying about that water locks that you're talking about as the finished. There's been a lot of people complaining and talking about how hard it is and not to use it. So you're about the fourth or fifth person I've heard say that.
Yeah, they put it for there's more of an oil finish, but it really isn't. It has a varnish in it, so the first coat can be wiped off, and then the rest of it, if you're not careful, turns just into glop. And you have to take it all off. I've gotten very good with removing everything and starting from scratch if I have to. And it looked really nice, but it was just don't need the aggravation. I'd rather give my stuff seal a coat of shellac, rub it down, and then a couple of coats of spray lacquer, and then rub that down if I don't want it too shiny. And that just works nicely. And in the winter, I'm using a wax finish because I can't spray inside. And when it gets to be 30 degrees out, my spray booth consists of a stool to which I attach a piece of newspaper and tape it down, and I go out in the yard. That's my spray booth.
As you can see, folks, she has very high-tech equipment going on here.
Well, listen, girl, what do you expect? They don't do high-tech.
I'm gonna.
You say that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say about your high-tech equipment about the stool. She says that, but that's funny. I use it's a folding table that I bought. I'm trying to think anyway, but it's a folding table that's kind of a plastic table I bought. It's for carpentry work, but I take that and take it outside and put a piece of cardboard on it, and most of my spraying is on that because, number one, I don't want to spray inside the shop, and you don't want all those fumes and the overspray and everything. So when you say that, I was laugh because that's almost the exact same thing I do.
Well, it's easier to go outside. It's a little tricky if it's windy. And I had a project that I had to get done by yesterday, actually. And I waited until we got one warm day. I mean, up here, New York was a pretty cold winter. We had one day when it was the mid-50s. I said, that's my spray day. And I got myself out and got it done. But I won't bring that stuff in the garage. It's bad enough with the sawdust. We got an air cleaner that helps take care of that. We got whatever dust control stuff we can use. But the spray, that's scary. That I don't want to be breathing in.
Yeah, and there again, folks, she goes by Scroller Girl on YouTube, and you'll see videos showing her shop, the different things she has set up, how she has them plugged separately, and how her dust control system is set up. And also, she shows some of her glue-up methods. And I'm going to jump into the Q&A right quick. We have Edgar Natras. He's a loyal viewer. Good to see you, Ed. He says, greetings from Nevada. And for those that don't know how to use the Q&A, if you clicked on the link that I posted, me and Russ posted on Facebook, look in this upper corner on your screen, not mine. You'll see what looks like the side of a Rubik's Cube. Just click on that and then Q&A, and then you should be able to type in a question. And we have 13 viewers, and appreciate y'all. And if there's anybody that, even if it's a topic we're not covering or it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, feel free to ask it. And if it's related to Carole, we will relay it over to her. And but y'all are more than welcome to ask anything you'd like. And I'm feel pretty confident that Carole has no problem answering that. I'm very embarrassed that I cannot find the first book you came out with, because I know I have it because I use it all the time. I just, like I said before, I'm scared of change, so I keep doing really boring ones. The only thing I change is the diameter of it. But
Well, we'll see
Carole,
what we can do about that.
alrighty. I thank you for that. I'm also saying,
First,
and
we
this
have
is,
to get him to use flat blades.
yeah, absolutely. I'll probably do a lot less sanding that way, definitely. But I've seen one method, and Carole, this isn't to go against what you've taught in your book, but I saw somebody, and because I have some comprehension skills, that I actually grasped. That's hard to say. Grasped it hard. It easier. Uh, when they did their rings on the side of that same board, they would put the lines showing how wide their rings were. They were vertical lines, and they would put a diagonal from the bottom of one. That's a bad example because, okay, imagine there's two lines here when I do this. They would draw one. They would draw one line, or maybe since I'm doing it this way, it would look like a letter N backwards, and they would tilt their table till their blade matched up with that diagonal line, and that's how they got their angle. I think that, personally for me, is easier because I use spiral blades. So anybody watching that uses spiral blades to want to make bowls, that makes it a little easier, but don't shortchange yourself and not do her method, because it's clearly working for her. But yeah, spirals, I'm stuck in my ways, but it always tickles me to death when I do put a vase out there and you comment on it, because it's like, getting approval from the gods, or I had 50 questions until I went back over to you. Do you want to talk
You
about?
said Ed Natras had a.
No, he was just saying greetings from Nevada. That's how he lets you know he's watching, and he says hi. We have viewers.
Okay.
Please submit any questions you have, folks, and we will get them over to her. Carole, I know you could probably back this up. The sanding is obviously I was going to say most people don't like to sand, but that's when you get to reveal the treats that are below those layers. So would you like to discuss sanding methods, tools, and how it benefits you?
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, because actually what you're doing when you're doing the bowls, once you've done your cutting, it just starts. That's like your basic blank that you're going to work on. It's like the canvas that's sitting there. It's the sanding that brings it to life. It reveals the grain of the wood, and you can play with the shape of it. You can curve things in, you can curve things out, you can get different edge effects. Even with a relatively plain bowl, it's a creative process, and most people think of sanding as, the boring part, the thing that you've got to do, because if you don't sand it, it'll look like crap, and not the creative part, where the aim is to make it look as artistic as you can. So when I do sanding, I usually chuck my sanders into the drill press, and I bring my stool over, and I can zone out for 2 hours. I put on my dust collector, I put on my headphones, and I just sand away and watch what happens. And it's sort of like magic. You watch the uglies disappear. I feel it sometimes with my fingers. I don't even look, because I think the fingers are more sensitive for picking up lumps and bumps and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And if you think of it, it's like sculpting, and particularly for some of the newer ones that I'm doing, where you use several sets of rings and you're shaving away an awful lot of wood, you're creating something. So that thinking of it that way, and I've even started using some small carbide burrs for some of the projects, and it's sort of moving toward carving, and I think of it as carving with sanders. And if you think of it that way, it's like the people who do intarsia and spend forever working on each little piece. It's, in fact, like somebody had described it for some big project, that each little piece was its own project. It's a different headset. It's a way that you make it look beautiful, not something that you want to just get rid of and get done as quickly as possible. If you make your straight-sided bowls, your simple bowls, You can sand the outside of it on a belt sander. Just set the table to the right angle and sand away, and that'll get done. You know, but that's like production work. You know, if I needed 40 bowls for my booth, if once that can get done quickly. But, you know, I don't sell a thing.
Really?
My kids come and visit, they take things away. Once I've made something, created it, and passed it out there for people to copy or see, my work's done.
Okay, you say the kids take them home, so I'm going to start calling you Mom. Not for any age reasons, but Mommy, please send me some bowls and vases. I got a couple more in the Q&A. I call Rick Hutchison my dad, but that's a whole nother story. But Kelly Brown wants to know for all of us, do you listen to music or an ebook while cutting? And Brian Gidney says, hi, Carole.
Well, hi back. I just concentrate. When I'm doing one thing, I don't like being distracted. So I put on my headphones, you know, take out the shop noise, and I just focus on what I'm doing. Because, you know, when you're dealing, let's say, with working with a sander on a drill press, that thing's spinning. You know how quickly it can take what you're using and fling it across the room? And I've already got a screen over the little dust collector I use at the drill press, so that things don't disappear down it when I'm doing some drill presses. But you have to be alert. You know, people think of things dangerous, you know, like your table saw, your bandsaw, where you can amputate yourself. But anything that's spinning can send something flinging back at you. So you really have to be aware. So, and I work in small time allotments. If I stay too long in one position, I have trouble getting up.
I understand that one.
Now at that stage where, you know, you sort of have to respect your body or you get yourself in big trouble.
Absolutely. I got to go to Russell because when you talked about things going flying, I think he can relate because he was doing this. You got a story for us, Russell?
Oh yeah, I've got several of them, but the one that is the most interesting is one year when at Easter time I was making some Easter baskets, and I made some wooden eggs to go in the baskets, and I was sanding on this one particular wooden egg on my disc sander, which is about a 10-inch, I think it is, disc sander. But anyway, and it caught, and it come out of my fingers, and that wooden egg went about 40 feet across the shop and hit the wall and actually left an indentation in the wall about 40 foot away. And I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, now that, oh, by the way, Edgar Natras just said he subscribed to you, Carole, so you got one more subscriber.
Okay, great.
Yay. And Edgar is a great guy. We talked to him a lot off the air. Very knowledgeable guy in woodworking in general. But, yeah, a lot of people don't realize that sanders and the stuff you're working with can be dangerous. But I know, other than belt sanders, what do you use for sanding? Because I know that cling spore, for one, I would love to have an inflatable drum sander because I think that'd be perfect for the smaller pieces. But what different kinds of sanders do you use?
I could probably come up with about a dozen different sanders, but let me just sort of think of how I'm laid out in my shop. I treated myself. We moved up here to a big house from small condos, so I have a full bay of a garage to work with instead of sharing a one-car garage with a car, which sort of restricts what we can have. And I treated myself to a Supermax drum sander, and that is one beautiful piece of equipment. Because when I do my glue-ups, and I need to get them absolutely flat, there's nothing that takes it down like that. Or to get different thicknesses of wood. When we resource stuff, it is one fabulous piece of equipment, and it's worth every penny. So that's sort of the crown jewel. That's, you know, for the wood prep is absolutely essential. I got the jet belt and disc combo. I guess it's a 9-inch disc and a 6-inch belt with a tilting table, and that is invaluable for a lot of stuff I do. I even put a video out on how you can use that for sanding curved-sided bowls to get the process going, to get rid of the glue and the real uglies, but that is a workhorse. Then I have a spindle sander, and I got spindles from 3 inches down to 1/4 of an inch.
Wow.
And that on inside curves just does a job that nothing else can do. I don't use it all that much, but sometimes if a ring needs some treatment even before I glue it up, just to make it easier later, I'll put it in there. So that I use a lot. And then I have the small sanders that I use with the drill press or the flex shaft. The King Arthur sanders, they have the Guinevere system, which is a whole bunch of small inflatable sanders. And I use their round inflatable. They came out with a little mini. They advertise it. I think they put a dime next to it to give us some idea of the size of it. I think it's 3/4 of an inch in diameter. And that's a real treasure. Those round sanders, since they're rounded on the bottoms, are about the only thing you can really use to do the inside of bowls. Anything else is going to gouge it. Any kind of a drum, you're going to hit the bottom of it. And you're going to look down. It's like the way I used to do ironing, where I'd iron in more wrinkles than I'd iron out. Well, when you sand, you want to make it better, not worse. I mean, the bottoms of my early bowls sort of look like the ridges you have on meat cutting boards, those wells.
Yeah.
So I very quickly learned what you can and can't do. That's why if you look at my instructions, you always finish the inside before you put the base on. Because once the base is on, that's locked into place. And I picked up Klingspor, which is another really great site for getting sanding stuff. Have a set made by Sand Boss, and those are pneumatic sanders. They pipe up they inflate with a bicycle pump. And I got some smaller, medium-sized ones when I need a little bit more area, something more aggressive. But those I use all the time. There's also a flat sanding pad. Klingspor calls it a flexi pad. You have discs. I use 2 and 3 inch discs that attach with a hook and loop with a Velcro system to the bottom of that, so you can do quick changes. And that takes care of the outside of curved bowls. And I've recently graduated. I started with a 2 inch, and now I can usually handle a 3 inch, which is more aggressive. I found out when I can't do it because I messed up something, but we won't talk about that.
Carole messed something up?
Oh, hey, I don't post those.
You've probably done this before. But I don't know if you've ever done the whole thing, but I would love, me personally as a viewer, I know YouTube isn't your only outlet because you probably submit to a lot of magazines and books and things, but I would love to see, even if it had to be sped up, a start to finish, from your design to your layout to your glue up to your sanding, and I think that would be neat to watch. You may already have snippets of stuff like that, but it's been a while since I've been to your channel. I apologize for that. Last one I saw was you talking about the layout of your shop.
I've never done a whole sequence like that on a video, but the only thing that we did was, it wasn't a scroll project. We made a tile-top kitchen table. My partner Joe is a woodworker. He does the big stuff. His shop's down in the basement. Mine's in the garage. And that we did from start to finish because it was such a huge job. But usually what I do is I just pick up a technique or something that I think people should know, and that comes to me at the spur of the moment. And we just shoot a quick video of it. But I've never done anything in a whole sequence start to finish. But that's a good idea. Maybe it'll inspire me one day over the summer. And
definitely include a blooper reel, because me personally, I think that makes these people that, like, for lack of a better word, I consider you kind of a celebrity in the scroll sawing world. So I love to see celebrity people or people you always see acting normal and serious. I love to see their blooper reels. Number one, it proves to people that you're human. Obviously, we know you are. You're not a mutant alien, but I love to see those personally. That's just me. But we got stuff going in the Q&A section, so I'm going to read those. Yeah, Brian Gidney is asking now why you haven't produced more YouTube videos. It's probably because he's really busy, but I'll let her answer that.
I haven't produced any more because nothing has come to me that I want to do a video on. Usually something inspires me. There's a need. There's something I've developed that I want to get out there. I can't do a video just because I feel like doing a video, you know, unless I think it's going to be worthwhile. I don't want to go wasting people's time. But if anyone has an idea for something they'd like to see, you know, then just shoot me an email. My woodworking email address, which is scrollsawbowls@yahoo.com. And I always answer. I check my email regularly. And if it's something that I think I can do, I'd be happy to do it. But I've been lazy. It's also winter. The garage is cold, and the heater makes too much noise. And but I look at that and I say, oh God, it's been a while since I posted. It's hard. It's easy to get started. It's hard to keep the momentum going. So I mean to do it. I feel badly about not doing it, but that's no excuse. I just need some ideas. So please, got ideas? Give me the ideas. I'll make the videos.
Yeah, folks, y'all throw over some ideas. Judy Hunter is wanting you to repeat your website address so she can locate it.
Okay.
Or your blog, whatever you choose.
Blog, yeah, it's scrollsawbowls.blogspot.com.
Scrollsawbowls.blogspot.com.
It's one word, scrollsawbowls.blogspot.com.
Alrighty, Russ, you be a little quiet over there. Am I babbling too much to let you get any questions in? Are you glad that I'm covering all the questions?
I'm just listening.
You're glad because you don't have to think of any questions? I'm thinking...
Well, I was curious about the sanding, but she went over the sanding, so that blew my question away. But
another one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of. It was interesting you said though, but if you're going to attach a base, to make sure you sand it first before you attach the base. That makes sense because
the inside of the bowl, because you got to. One of the things I'm going to do. At Fox, I'm giving another bowl demo, and one of the things that I will not do is give the same demo. I hate doing the same thing twice, because I get bored. I was a college teacher for over 30 years, teaching pretty much the same courses, and I always managed to make each class fresh and different, just so I wouldn't fall asleep. But one of the things I'm going to cover this year is how to make the bowls better. And one of the things is, you look at that bottom before you glue on the base. And if it's not the shape it's supposed to be, then you still have work to do. If it's a little lopsided, it's supposed to be a circle, it should look like a circle. If it's an oval, it should look like an oval. If you have stripes or something on the bottom of your base, an equal amount should show once you glue on the base. You really have to pay attention to it, because once that's glued on, it's fixed. You can't do anything else with it. And what I see, and this drives me nuts often on the floor, and people will post pictures of their work, and I see stuff that they could do easily to bring it up to the next level. But how you do that without offending someone, it's tricky. And even if someone says, what can I do to make it better, you got to make sure they really want to hear that and not just, oh, it's fine. It's absolutely great the way it is. So you sort of got to figure out, but it bothers me, and the way I'm going to do it indirectly is in my class. I'm going to show examples. I saved some of my earlier pieces, so Charlie, you'll like that. Those are like my blooper pieces. It didn't quite work. I saved some of those, and I'll show you. This is what happens, and these are the ways you can avoid it.
Alrighty, Brian Gidney was saying that he respects the fact that you do videos when you're inspired, and some YouTubers will feel like they have to put out a certain amount of projects in a certain timeline, and I think that's the angle he was coming from. But it's good that you don't just throw videos out there left and right, because it could kind of burn some people out. But I don't think I could get enough videos of you, because I mean, even the stuff we see in this book here, I don't have the camera on me, so that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, you have so many different looks going on here. I'd love to see some of these in the video, but that's just me. I'm only one person, but that's one feedback you got. But we have 12 viewers, but there again, folks, if you look about this part of your screen, there's what looks like the side of a Rubik's Cube. Just click on that and click on the Q&A, and then feel free to ask. I'm multi-directional here. I like to start out with the wood being the rings being very wide in order to give myself sanding room, because of my imperfections and my lack of expertise in getting these things done. But you talked about the bowls and vases being round. When I do the vases, sometimes when I show the finished product, because I know nobody will ever see it outside of my home. I'll just show the side that looks round. Because sometimes I've had a vase that, from one direction it looks perfectly like this, but then it can look kind of skewed a little bit from another angle. I can't get my hands right because I got looking at a mirror image of myself. But from one area, I'm doing a perfect looking vase, but then it'll look slightly skewed because I didn't center all the sanding. But if you make the walls real thick, it gives you a lot of sanding room. But if you're doing the swags and everything like you were talking about, it has to be sanded a certain way in order for those swags to line up.
Well, let me tell you something. I don't think I've publicized this, sort of a little like airing the dirty laundry, but it's a blooper that no one will ever know about, and it's in that box book that you just showed up, Charlie. There's
Really?
a project. Yeah, there's a project near the end. There's a box. Let me look. It would be right in the artistic bowls or artistic boxes section. I think that's what we called it.
Okay.
At the end, and it's got a lid that has an ebony handle.
Okay, artistic boxes. Okay.
Okay, it's made out of maple. It's got sort of a checkered center ring, and I think a yellow heart lid with an ebony handle.
Okay. The multicolored square box.
That's it. You got it.
Okay, we have a blooper on there. Can you point it out to us?
You can't see it. You know why you can't see it? You see what happened was when I was gluing it up, I wasn't paying enough attention to getting the bases completely flat. I mean, when you make rings, forces get released that you wouldn't believe. I think little genies live in there and try to make your life miserable. And I had it so that I was pretty sure when I put it in the press, it would come down nice and flat. You wouldn't see an ugly glue line. Well, I guessed wrong. So here I have this box that I put all of this work into, including making the center ring. The handle was from my precious store of ebony. It was going to be the crown jewel of the box.
Yeah.
And I screwed it up, but only on two of the sides.
So that's the side that's showing away from the camera?
You won't see anything imperfect in the picture, because when I sent it in, I put little pieces of tape on the sides. They were not to photograph. I wrote no on the tape.
That's funny.
And a lot of people do that. I got the idea from a turner who had very nice stuff, and he said, "Here, I'm showing this bowl that I made, but I'm showing it with the bad side to the wall." And you never would have known if he hadn't seen it. So people do that. You just never know it. I mean, no one shows off their dirty laundry. The stuff that didn't work, they shove away, and they only parade out the good stuff. When I was doing my training, I'm also a clinical psychologist. That's another hat I wear. And you'd read about cases that people had. They were brilliant. They always knew what to say and everything. That's because they'd never published the patients they'd lost, the things they said that were absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
So you got to take that. What people are showing is the best of the best. And that box, I said, this was took too much time and too many expensive pieces of wood to make it again, when the quick fix was just don't photograph that side.
Absolutely. What's funny is that you talk about you said a psychologist.
Uh-huh.
And I think what's funny about that is most people that have watched this show for any length of time will tell you that I do need therapy, but it's usually because of Mark Stallways, but we'll get into that later. But Russ, you want to throw up some ideas here? I'm running dry. But
I would never do something like that. Billion years.
Yeah, Russ is very angelic.
Well, you
No,
and Charlie, you say you give me celebrity status, for which I thank you. But in fact, I was just a member of the Scrollsoft Forum. I think I been scrolling since like 2006. I mean, not a long time. And I was just a regular member when the Bowl book came out. And I wrote to Bob Duncan and I asked if he could introduce me on the forum so that people would know that I wasn't just another member, that I also had a book out and that I knew something, so I could serve as a resource. So I came through the ranks. I'm not like a Judy Gale Roberts or a Kathy Wise or people who do scrolling as a business and have made a big name for themselves, and also publish. You know, I was just somebody, I'm retired. I retired about 2003, which is really, really cool. You know, college teachers, we were allowed to take retirement at 55. I took it just a little bit later, but not much. You know, so I came into it as a hobbyist. As someone, I've been exposed to woodworking all my adult life, because when I got married with my ex, we bought an old house and had no money. So we had to learn how to do things, you know, with books and trial and error, and one or two friends who were there to guide us. So I've been around woodworking, but I was the one who would keep the kerf open on the other end of the saw. You know, I'd help with the measurements, but I didn't do hands-on stuff. So it wasn't until we moved to a condo, you know, with my current partner, and that was 2004, they had a community wood shop that I joined. So I came in relatively late, got to the scroll saw only because the bandsaw that I was using to make collapsible baskets was such a wreck that putting your fingers close was really putting them in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a piece of crap scroll saw in the shop with pin blades. And I lobbied hard for them to get a regular, real scroll saw that
Go ahead.
okay, that I'm just wondering what you're doing there.
Just saying.
Oh.
Yeah, my wife wanted me to.
Hi.
Talk about, what?
Maybe you should have her tell you what you could have done better.
Okay, I appreciate it. Sorry about the interruption there. She texted me, asked me if I wanted. This is an example of what I was saying about photographing. It's a little bit dusty right now. Photographing it from a certain angle. You see how it's kind of skewed off to the side?
Yeah.
That's why I only photographed it where it looked centered.
It's pretty.
Even the
It's
things
real pretty.
that's aromatic cedar, but that's my personal favorite wood to work with. But I didn't even finish clear coating it. I just, when the clear coat was wet, that's when I took the video. I love doing big stuff, even when it comes to vases. But that's why my wife wanted to.
Oh, that's real pretty, Charlie.
Thank you. And if you want to keep the smell, you can leave the inside unclear coated, except for the mouth, I guess. One thing I did that I hadn't seen anybody else do, but I never really publicized it. I probably should have. If you do something this big around, you can, that center ring, you can make it like this wide, and you can actually scroll a design out of the middle of that thing because it's not going to get hit by the upper arm of your scroll saw. And that was actually an idea I did, and I have since lost a picture on a hard drive. But that's an idea for you folks, that if you do want to do a big vase, you could do a wide center ring and put a design on there. And if you could probably get away with doing designs in some of the other rings. That just, I don't know, that's total experimentation there. But you were talking.
Yeah, the magazine trolley had a vase that was a similar shape to yours. It was a much smaller version. But somebody had done some, I guess, looked like large fretwork on it, sort of carved into it. Just just to do something different. They gave me credit for the project, the original project, which was nice, and I thought that was classy of them to do. But he took it and played with it. So yeah, I mean, if people do carving, they could do all sorts of stuff with that. Like if you look at some of the really gorgeous stuff that the Turners are doing, they just start with the Turn project and they work on it with all sorts of other tools to turn it into a piece of art. No reason why you couldn't do that with a scroll bowl. Either with the rings before or once it's glued up.
Oh, and I appreciate it. Just so you know, my wife's not snooty. I just have headphones on, so she couldn't hear you when you said hi. That's why she didn't respond. Brian Gidney in the Q&A is saying that vase of yours is my favorite piece, Charles, and I appreciate that, Brian. And he says a professional knows how to fix their mistakes or cover them up without notice. And that was you talking about that. But you said something that got me to thinking, because I'm the same way. I mean, in my opinion, you're way up higher on the totem pole than I am. That's just my opinion. But you said I'm not a Judy Gale Roberts or a Kathy Wise, but I do see you among their ranks because you made a niche with these bowls, vases, and boxes, and you are the go-to person when it comes to that. So I think you deserve a lot a lot of praise. A lot of people come to me saying, Charles, you inspired me. You do this and you do that. Or some people will call me the master, but I don't feel like I fit those molds. But it's very flattering to hear. I won't deny it. But and I'm not just saying it because you're here. I'm not a brown noser. To me, you are celebrity status in the scroll sawing community. Just right up there with Steve Good and Judy Gale Roberts, Kathy Wise, Shayla Landry, and Sue May are the pattern goddesses, as far as I'm concerned, as was Dirk Bowman and Karen Bowman. We got another thing in the Q&A I'm going to jump to. Donna Presley says, thanks for an interesting show. I really enjoyed it. You're welcome, Donna. I really wish you folks would ask some questions. I mean, thank you, Brian, for your...
I was just going to say,
go ahead.
Back to when she was talking about she only filmed the back side of the that one bowl because of the mistake. I've on a few scroll saw projects that I've done throughout the years that were actually going to be sold pieces. There's been an occasion or two when I broke a piece off of it and actually put it back together and sold the piece like that. But it would have never went out of my shop unless I knew without a shadow of a doubt that there's no way they would ever know it, or the piece wasn't going to break off again or fall off. So, yeah, I can understand and appreciate what you're saying. You put so much work into that one piece, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a problem with it. Yeah, just film one side of it or shoot one side of it. That makes total sense.
Or, if you make a mistake, you say, what can I do to turn this into an opportunity? One of the bowls in the bowl book, it's a crisscross pattern on it, and it looks like it has a base. And the reason it looks like it has a base is that I accidentally sanded the lower ring in as though it were a base, until I realized it wasn't the base. I said, okay, I can move it.
That's what Bob Ross used to call happy accident.
So, you look, you say, okay, what can I do? I did this. What can I make of it? What can I do with it? Can I use it for another project? Can I do something different with it? And very seldom do I say, this is just a lost cause. Let me just cut my losses right now and move on. But it happens occasionally. But sometimes the mistakes, things you don't expect to have happen, are the most productive.
Okay, I have two more questions. One of them's for all of us, so I'm going to do that one secondly. Donna Presley wants to know, Carole, what size grit do you vinyl sand to? Or I guess what do you start with and what do you end up with on grit?
Well, it depends. If the wood is really very, very hard, I may even start out with a 60 or an 80. It depends how much work. For softer wood, maybe I'll start out with a 120. Sometimes I'll give it a start and see what happens. See if it's. I use the gentlest grit I can, because the coarser the grit, the more you have to sand out in terms of getting rid of all the sanding marks. And I've gotten really very meticulous about trying to get rid of all that stuff. And depending on the wood, I'll sand up to a 240 or maybe a 320. If I don't really need to sand up higher than that, I think 320 usually does it. And at that point, I give it the sealer coat of shellac. And I sand that down with a 320, and sometimes with a 320 sanding mop, which sort of polishes it up, and it's my last chance to correct things that I may not see otherwise. Somehow it shows more of the flaws. But more than that, I really don't need, and then I give it the finishing coats. But, really, different woods sand differently, and sometimes you find a harder wood you just don't need to go to as high a grit. Like something like aspen looks like crap until you get it pretty well sanded, and then it starts looking like ivory. So the transition is enormous.
All right. Well, we're nearing the end of the show, but I do have two more questions or actually three more questions. I will get to yours, Brian. Bob Rawson wants to know, what does Carole use to clamp the pieces together?
I use a bowl press, the kind that I show that in my book. I think Dave Van Ness had a fancier version of it, made basically with 2 pieces of plywood, 6 carriage bolts, and wing nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts and wing nuts.
And that's in your first book, correct, or is it in both of your books?
Yeah, that's in the first book. I think it may be referenced in the second book. I'm not sure if we put that in. We may have. And it just, you see plans for things like that all over the place. It gives downward pressure. That's really what you want. And
Yeah, Bob.
Dave Van Ness, who's the one who devised Scrollmania, which is a fabulous site for bowl makers, made quick clamps that are clamped down. They're glued sort of off-center, they're drilled off-center, so you screw them down onto the carriage bolts, and they will grab. And that's a really big time save. I'll be bringing some of those with me up to the open house at Fox Chapel, so if anyone who's around is going to be there, speak to me about it. I may have an extra set to give out. And it's the best way. If you try doing it with boards and clamps, it gets to be very complicated. You don't want to have to be thinking about keeping everything together.
Absolutely. And Mommy, don't forget to save me a bowler vase, okay? Just saying. But Kelly Brown wants to know, do you start with the design in mind, or sometimes just start and let the design appear as you go?
I usually have something in mind, something I've seen, something I want to try, but sometimes I have to tweak it, because what I think of first that might look good may not be once I start getting my wood together. But I spend a lot of time going through the pieces of what I have, holding them up, seeing what colors go with what colors, and what I want to do with it. It has to do with the shape, too, because the fancier the shape, sometimes I'll just use plain wood to show off the beauty of the wood. The simpler shapes are better for the more involved glue-ups and patterns. So they sort of go hand in hand. And sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to end up with until I pull out the stuff I've got and see what looks good with what.
How long had you been doing it before you decided to start showing it to people? In other words, how long did it take you to grasp the concept and the look you wanted before you started showing it to people, even before the books came out?
Actually, it was really pretty quick because of the timing, as I'd mentioned earlier, Charlie. It was like right after my first bow box was published in the Instructional magazine. And, as soon as that went out, I'd been playing with the bowls for a while, and I was doing simpler bowls, and to my surprise, they came out looking really, really good. So there was a very short delay period. Somehow I got lucky. In fact, one of my original bowls is one of the ones on the cover of the bowl book. It's got sort of a gingham pattern to it. I mean, I have a crafts background, so I'm knitting, crocheting, sewing, and stuff like that. So I relied on that and some of my knowledge of fabrics that I like, and I came up with that one. And the fact that that was considered good enough to be put on the cover, so I really just got lucky by being careful, by not overreaching, by not going further. My skills developed along with my bowls. It's like you start out with the stuff you can do, and as you can do more, you can move into more. But I was lucky. I was pretty successful right away.
That's great to hear. Bob Rawson and Brian, I swear I'm going to get to your question. Brian's question is to all of us. That's why I'm holding off on it. Bob says, do you glue them all together or a few rings at a time? I want to try this. And I would guess it'd be a few rings at a time that don't go beyond, like if you're using an oscillating spindle sander, you do up to the point that can reach, but I'll let you answer how you choose.
Yeah, usually for the more complicated bowls, the ones that use more than one set of rings, they do a few rings at a time so I can sand the inside. And then sometimes I'll add a ring at a time. If I'm doing swags or something that's really difficult to line up, I find I will go one ring at a time because that way I can concentrate on that one thing. I use weld bond for my glue-ups, and that grabs and sets up pretty quickly, so I can let it set for an hour and then glue on another ring. If it's a simple bowl, then I will try a couple at a time, but more and more I'm moving away from that just for greater control over what I'm doing. And anyway, I'm retired. I got all the time I want.
By golly. Brian Gidney wanted to ask all three of us, how long have all of you been scrolling and what are your favorite pieces? So I guess I'll start with Russ because he hasn't talked a whole lot. I haven't given him a lot of chances to.
I've been scrolling for 35 years, probably a little bit more, I don't know, somewhere around that area, about 35 years. And what is my favorite? I don't really have a favorite, in all sincerity. I like everything I've done so far. I mean, I do everything from baskets to Ferris wheels to welcome signs to a lot of, I'd say if I had a favorite category, it would be religious and crosses. That's my favorite category, but I've done so much stuff, I don't really have a favorite.
Mine would be cowboy and Indian rustic western stuff, but that's just me. Carole, I believe you already said how long you've been scrolling, but if you want to cover that again.
Yeah, I
And what
started
is your
scrolling
favorite
about
piece?
2000. I started scrolling about 2006. That gives me only about 9 years in, so I'm sort of the baby around here. But I
You
learned
can't
pretty quick.
tell. What is your favorite piece
My
you've done?
favorite pieces actually haven't come out yet. Those,
Oh,
yeah, well, those are the pieces I'm starting to work on. I'm bringing in the stuff I did as a cake decorator. So the project that's out in the also magazine is the start of it. But I'm starting to create flowers that look more like they're carved, that look like the sugar paste flowers I used to make for cakes. And I'm
oh
having a lot
wow.
of fun. I'm dragging out a lot of my cake decorating stuff and my cake decorating books for ideas, working petal by petal, taking compound cut things and sanding them so they look really sleek and delicate. And
Wow.
it's coming out just the way I envisioned it. We're making the stamens out of wood veneer. So I am having a ball doing that stuff. It's sort of bringing me full circle back to stuff that I loved doing years ago. That's why you have so many baking videos on my YouTube channel.
Are you in the works on any more books, or have you reached the end of the road on books? I can imagine you got a lot more potential for more books.
Well, I put out my feelers to see if there's any interest, but quite frankly, this summer I'll be 70. So at this point, I can't put in like 5 or 6 hours a day the way I did it when I was doing the earlier books, and still expect to be walking around upright. So I got to respect my limitations. If there was a call for expanding the whole book, adding on to it with all the new stuff that I've developed since it first came out, I'd be interested in that. A complete new book off the bat, they'd have to make me one lovely, sweet offer for me to take it. But in the meantime, as long as I can get stuff out, I took the overage for the cupcakes that appeared in I think in the previous issue. They didn't have room for everything, so I took up the rest of it on my blog. So as long as I can get stuff out there other ways, I think I'd rather do that.
That's an example for a cupcake. But you say you're getting ready to turn 70, Mommy. You don't look a day over 28. I'm just saying.
I don't know what this webcam has done to me. In fact, Joe said he didn't want me doing this because he didn't want me to be ugly.
Oh man.
I said, okay. But I figured I still got a number of good years ahead of me. I just can't do as much at one time as I once did.
Yeah, you seem healthy as a horse. I mean that as a compliment. We got 3 things in the Q&A. We have actually gone a little bit over on the show. Bob Rawson says a big thank you to Carole for coming on the show. Great info, and thanks to excuse me, Russ and Charles for another great show. And I can echo that. Thank you so much for coming on, Carole. I know we were crossing paths around the holiday season. That was a terrible time for me to ask. But, I've never been known for good planning. But,
It's okay,
Bob
Charlie.
Rawson,
I kept you in line.
I appreciate that. Bob Rawson also says I've been scrolling for about 4 months, and my favorite is my next one. I guess that's a good thing to say. Brian Gidney says awesome and interesting show, folks. Thank you for watching, Brian, and for your participation. There again, folks, we will put her contact information, email address, her blog, which is scrollsawbowls@blogspot.com, and her book can be bought through pretty much any resource, but it's made through Fox Chapel Publishing, so you can go to Fox Chapel Publishing. I believe Amazon has gotten all their stuff sorted
They
out.
finally got their act together. They got it now.
Oh yeah, and she's got 2 books out. Again, I couldn't find my first one, but this is the second one. Edgar Natural says this episode was way too short, but a pleasure to watch. Thank you very much, Edgar. Now, I won't volunteer, Carole, but I am going to put you on the spot live on the air. We always open up the room to anybody to join the panel after the show is over. Do you have a problem with answering questions in person with people on the panel?
I'm a little bit limited for time, so maybe for a little bit, 10 minutes or so, I could.
Okay, now there's no guarantee we'll be flooded because people do a lot of things on Saturdays, but I don't want to keep any longer than necessary. Thank you very much, Edgar, for that. And Brian Gidney says, Carole, please come back, and I echo that. Even if you're just on the panel someday, I'd love to have you on because me and Russ only know so much. But I'd like to thank everybody.
I'm a wealth of knowledge. I said I'm a wealth of knowledge, but not a bottomless pit.
I hear you. I know a couple things, but Carole, I know I speak for me and myself and Russ, and probably a lot of viewers. I'm tickled to death that we got you on, and I cannot thank you enough. And you are welcome back anytime. Even if it's to ask questions about regular scrolling, you know, because you say you've only been scrolling since 2006. If there's anything you're wanting to learn from other scrollers, you know, maybe we could have you on, or just, you know, however you want to do it, you know, just being a regular panel member. Just.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I've enjoyed being here, and I hope I've been some help to some folks, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, by God. Again, thank you very much. Thank you to all the viewers, and even if you see this video months down the road, comment, ask questions, and by all means, share and thumbs up. And but the one thing you got to remember, and I will. Anybody that wants to get in this room to actually speak to Carole, I can't guarantee how long she'll stay on because she does have other things to do. But anybody that wants a link to join the room, write to me on Facebook or Russ on Facebook privately. We'll send you a link to get into the room until we reach the maximum quota. But anyway, thanks again, Carole. Thank you, Russ, for being so talkative. But one thing you got to remember the most is scroll on.